Welcome to the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Geisel. This podcast is dedicated to helping you create a life that sets your soul on fire. I believe that is truly possible for everybody, but you have to be willing to do a few things. You have to be willing to let go of your past conditioning. You have to be willing to break free from societal norms. And you have to be willing to get really curious about your life and how you can start to look at it differently. Each week, we will hear stories from people who have done exactly this. People who chose to disrupt the life path they were on, go against the grain, and share the lessons and perspective shifts they had to make along the way. Every episode is committed to not only inspiring you and connecting you with other amazing humans, but actually giving you the tools you need to use this information in your own life so that you continue to evolve and reconnect with your highest self. Are you ready? Let's have some fun. I want to welcome you back to this week's episode of the Evolve Beyond Limits podcast. And this week we are speaking with Bridgette Boucha. So Bridgette is a CFO for scaling business owners, and she really believes that you deserve to run a profitable business while living a fuller life. Numbers may be her jam, but people are her gold, and her perfect day includes nature and a good belly laugh. You can see why Bridgette and I get along so damn well. But as you go through this interview, I know that you're going to pull a lot from it. She is the epitome of just climbing the corporate ladder and then feeling that gnawing in your stomach of feeling disconnected from herself. We talk a lot about that, as well as ways that our personal goals are going to evolve, the difference between internal versus external validation, how energy and taking care of yourself is the number one factor in the success of your business. We talk about ways to incorporate more play and fun in your life, and how failure maybe isn't such a bad thing. So plus there's a little, we want to create a t-shirt, and I think that you'll love the aspect of that. So you'll have to tell us if we want to keep moving forward. But anyways, she's got an amazing story to tell. I want you to hear from her. So let's dive right into this week's episode. Okay, here we are with Bridgette today. And I'm just, thank you for being here. Like, I am so excited to have you here.
I am equally as excited. I love every chance that I get to jam with you.
We have a good time whenever we get to talk. So you guys are in for a treat. We'll say that. So before we get into your story, I always like to have listeners get to know you a little bit better. So let's start with a few just simple questions to get started. Are you up for that?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So where are you from originally, and like, where are you living now?
I'm originally from Minnesota, kind of the best of both worlds, city life, small town life on the Canadian border, northern Minnesota. And I live in Atlanta now. I've been here for 18 years in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh my gosh. Atlanta. So we enjoyed Atlanta. I was the first time I'd ever been to Atlanta besides the airport was when at the beginning of our 7-week trip, when we stayed in Bridgette's driveway. It was so fun. But Minnesota, so you're a Midwest girl, moved south, been in there for 18 years.
Yeah, kind of a hybrid at this point, I believe.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so let me ask you this. Where has been your favorite place to travel?
Ooh, this has been so on my mind lately. And I'm sure anybody listening as well, you think back to all these trips and the experiences. Bali's been on my mind quite a bit lately. It was a wonderful, beautiful experience. I solo traveled for my 40th birthday. I spent the first week in Bali, and just the food, the cuisine, the culture, just the Zen, it's like the mothership of yoga. Like, it was just amazing. And so I love that you asked that, because that's literally the first thing that came to my mind.
Okay, so I have a question, because can you ride elephants in Bali?
Yes. And swim with them.
Oh my gosh, I have to go. Okay. So that has been on my heart lately, as riding an elephant. And Andrew told me he would take me to the zoo, but that's not what I want to do. So,
right. It's a little bit different. I was actually, now that I'm saying that, I did that in Thailand. I didn't do it in Bali. I did it in Thailand, but I'm betting that you can. So this is something someone's going to have to let us know about.
Yeah, please, somebody tell me, because that's where the next experience I create, we're going to Bali and we're swimming with the elephants if we can. So, Okay. Then what is some place that you haven't been yet that you've always wanted to go?
Italy. I don't know how I haven't been there yet. Like pizza and wine and like beautiful what I don't know how I haven't been there yet. It is on my list. Have you been?
We have not been to Italy. We planned a Italy trip with like our best friends, probably, oh God, 7 years ago, maybe. And because his parents or his grandparents were direct from Italy. And so we were going to go stay on this like little town village on like the Mediterranean. And then they got married. We were supposed to do it right after that. And then they got pregnant that was unexpected. And so
Mhm.
no, the short answer is no, we have not been there yet, but yes, very much on our heart as well.
Ugh, yeah.
Okay, I love it. So, all right. What is, I know this is a loaded question, but what is like your favorite book?
Ooh. It's
First
funny.
one that comes to mind.
Yeah. The 5 Second Rule by Mel Robbins.
Okay. I actually haven't read that. So I may have to check
It kind of
that out.
started my journey with personal development, quite frankly. And I listened to it. So I kind of cheat readed it, but I've listened to it multiple times since then.
I'm all about that. But I've learned that I actually can't read personal develop or I can't listen to personal development books. It's like I have to read them because I like to like highlight and like do all the things that I
There's like
can't do. So
actionable takeaways. Typically, that's the whole point of it, right? I
yeah.
totally get that. Yeah, it's hard to multitask with those, but sometimes I feel like it just kind of like infiltrates, and through osmosis, I feel better.
And I'm sure it probably does work like that. But yeah, I learned on our RV trip that fiction books are like, if I'm going to listen to something and want time to go by, like really like just have just a great time driving, I put on a fiction book, which isn't something I do enough. So like, it's actually been a really great way to listen to more like, 'cause there's a lot of lessons to be learned in fiction books as well.
Yeah, they're based on something, right? There's some like universal truth in there. That's a great idea.
Absolutely. I know it has definitely changed me. So, okay, last one. What was one of your favorite things to do as a kid?
Um, what was my favorite thing to do as a kid? I loved playing sports. I loved the activity of it, the team aspect of it. Yeah, I would say sports.
Any specific sport or just any sport?
Um, Softball, anything with a ball and a bat, wiffle ball, that was big. We used to have a garden in our backyard with like the green giant was like the corn, right? And if you hit it
Yes.
over, just like fun, playful memories, being barefoot out there, that really just does come to mind. It kind of embodies like a northern Minnesota summer to me.
And there's nothing like a Midwest summer, right?
Hmm.
I'm talking like we're getting just into it right now and it's so short. It's so short in the grand scheme of things, but there's nothing like we always say there's nothing like a Michigan summer. Like it's
It
beautiful.
forces you to be super efficient and intentional with your time during those couple months or however long it is. I agree, but then you don't take
So
it for
true.
granted. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Bridgette. So we met about a year ago and you have quickly turned into one of my favorite people in the whole world. So we actually were having this conversation the other day about how sometimes we start to like box in our friendships. Like these are my entrepreneur friends. These are my work friends. Like these are just our friends. Like these are my friends from high school. But like at the end of the day, even though I met you through entrepreneurship, like you have just become a friend to me and I couldn't be more grateful for that. So I want to dive into your story now. It's funny because knowing who you are now, it's really hard for me to imagine you like in a suit as like a CFO of a corporation, but something obviously led you there. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I like I said, I grew up in Minnesota and I just took a very traditional career path. My family wasn't necessarily made up of entrepreneurs. Some went to college, some didn't. I just always had it ingrained in me that I was going to go on and go to college. It just didn't seem like it just was the next logical step for me. I went in knowing that I liked numbers. Literally, the conversation went like this with my grandmother. I call her Gum. She's amazing. She's 93. She's like, "What's your favorite, subject in school?" I said, "Math." And she goes, "You should be an accountant." And I basically said, "Okay." I mean, what do we know? What do we know when we're growing up? We're just like, okay, that sounds good. It's a safe job. And from there, it was just that. I went into accounting, I got my degree, I started working immediately. And just there was this corporate ladder kind of in front of me. And I was very much motivated by progression, accomplishment, a lot of, gold star chaser, like when you realize that you can get, some positive reinforcement when you achieve something. And that was just kind of how, I guess, starting with my childhood, I recognized that pretty early. And I felt that in my corporate years. So for the first 15 years of my career, I saw this ladder in front of me and I really wanted to reach the top. And the top to me at that time was becoming a CFO of a company. So I did all the right things, right? I relocated to Atlanta. I was 23 years old. I look back and I was like, what? But I relocated, I worked late, I did all the things that I thought I was supposed to do, because when you do that, you advance. And I was so excited and grateful for the opportunity to make CFO by 30. So it's I think it was just shy of my 30th birthday. I don't even recall. It was right around there. And I was here in Atlanta and I made CFO and it was like, that's it, oh my gosh, I've done it. And it was for a women-owned company. It was in a design and furniture industry, which was super fun because I had come up working in manufacturing environments. So I just really embraced it and felt super excited about it for about the first couple years. And then at some point, which I didn't have language for at the time because I didn't know anything about personal development, I wasn't really sure. I was very, again, externally motivated and validated as opposed to internally. So I just didn't know. But I felt disconnected. I felt much less excited. Like my patience was kind of running thin on things that I would just brush off. And, looking back on that, it really was me feeling really far out of alignment, but also not understanding what alignment even was because I had shifted so far from it. So I just knew that I had to get myself out of that situation. There was like this unlived life inside of me. And I was like, I'll be damned if I don't let her out. Now I say this because if you're listening to this and you've made a big decision like this, like know that I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to quit my job. Like this was a process for me. There was a lot of emotions around it. There was a lot of uncertainty and doubt. I actually resigned 3 different times from corporate, twice from the same company. So there's no timeline for something like this. But I will share this is when you start to have those whispers in your mind where something doesn't feel right, or it's not your path. It's like, this can't be my life. Like this is not sustainable. This is not representing growth or, whatever that is for you. It's just going to get louder and you can't unsee it. So just embrace it, embody it, sit with it. Know that you don't have to go from A to Z, which to me would be like from being in the job to quitting. You can go from A to B to C to D. It's just about progression and getting you in the direction that you want to go. So that was 6.5 years ago that I resigned for the final time. So I've actually been an entrepreneur for 6.5 years, but I haven't been the entrepreneur that I am today for 6.5 years. And a lot of that has to do with community, mentorship, personal development, spiritual growth, just like expansive conversations like the ones you and I had. Like all of these things have brought me here today. And here today, I am an entrepreneur. I've scaled a business. I am a CFO for entrepreneurs. So put your spin on that. Like everything that you do primes you for the next step. So whereas like I call myself a pendulum swinger sometimes, and I was really in the corporate CFO world. And then when I left, I wanted to go so far away from it. But what happened is as that pendulum stopped swinging so, just crazily back and forth, somewhere in the middle, you find that it wasn't the job, the work, the numbers, the strategy. It wasn't that I didn't like. I just wasn't feeling myself in doing it. So I've repackaged it. I do it in my own way. It feels super juicy, yummy, and value added. I serve entrepreneurs because I am an entrepreneur. So don't abandon everything about your life. Use it as a building block to bring you back into that alignment as you define it, because it's going to change. So that's where I am today. That's kind of the nutshell of the story, but it's really, and it's in progress. Like, hey, to be continued, right? That's the coolest part about what we do is we're just always growing. And I just feel so excited to be, I thank my former self for all those decisions that were made, because there's a lot of hard ones in there and there's still more to come. But dang it, when your life starts to represent and resemble like what you had thought it would look like, stop and celebrate it. I mean, just stop and celebrate it. So I feel really good about that right now. And that's kind of where I got from A to B to Z to whatever I am. I don't even know what number. It doesn't matter what letter.
It doesn't matter. It does, and
Doesn't
thank you
matter.
for sharing all of that. And I think there's so many different takeaways we could have from that, but just starting with what you said about, it's really interesting to me that in our society, like the only thing that we're taught is, most people, I'm going to say most, not everybody, but like, is that you go to school, you get the job, and it's the job that the career counselor has told you that you should go into. Or like your grandma said, like, well, this is obviously the way that you should go. You go, you get that job. And then like the expectation of society is that you sit at the same job for 30 years until you retire and then you go live your life.
Mm-hmm.
I find this whole premise fascinating because it's like, as human beings, we are meant to grow and evolve. And by staying trapped in something that doesn't feel good for you is like, it's no wonder that there's so many people who are unhappy in their career choice. And I love what you said about, because I remember when I had to make the switch and I say I had to make, because that's literally how it felt. Like, just like Bridgette was saying, when I decided to quit my nursing job and go all in on like at that point was my nutrition coaching business and my like, fitness for special needs and all of that, there was a feeling that once you start to have it, and like, if you're listening, this is your intuition. This is your intuition trying to guide you in the right direction. It's a gut feeling that you can't let go of. Like, it didn't matter how many times I tried to be like, no, that's crazy, Stacey. Or Andrew tried, like my husband tried to be like, we can't do that. We can't afford that financially. And I couldn't let it go. Like, I was like, listen. And that was like the moment that I fudged all that. He was like, just show me the numbers. How are we going to make this work? And so I did what anybody would do. And I lied. And I totally fudged all the numbers and was like, see, honey, we can do it. Like, and at that point I was the person in charge of the finances. So he was like, okay, I mean, I guess if we can do it, which looking back, like things worked out, but I want you to touch more on that feeling of like, what that kind of looked like for you and that feeling that you couldn't shake, because I can almost guarantee there are so many people listening to this that have that same feeling. So yeah. What was that like for you? And how'd you start to like move through that?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you start to have the feeling. I know for me, and it was a little bit of confusion because like I said, this was my goal. This was everything I worked for and I had it. And then I all of a sudden, it wasn't all of a sudden, it was probably 3 to 4 years in, wasn't enjoying it. And then I thought, well, how do I even trust my own gut? This is what I thought I wanted. Because again, you think you're going to reach this goal and sit there for a while or camp out, for the rest of your life. And that's not the case. Like we grow as humans, our goals grow, our definition of success needs to be continuously redefined. And so I was confused kind of at first, thinking that I should just quiet it down. You're just having a bad day, whatnot. You start to know when it's more bad days than good. You start to know when you think about it, when you're not there, when you get in the car to go to work, in this case, insert your situation here. But when you go to put yourself in a situation that you're not feeling good about, that you're not excited about, that doesn't bring you joy, more often than not, then I feel like that's when you've really got to sit and listen to it. And for me, when it did become so big, there's a million things I would do differently, but I can't change the past. I can only change the meaning of it. And I look back and go, okay, well, this is how I handled this. This is how I did it. It was exactly the way that was meant for me. But looking back on it, I would have probably stopped. I talked about it a lot with those close to me, almost looking for permission. And I was never going to get the permission that I felt that I needed. And so as a result of that, my journey of untangling this kind of like connection to this old version of success took me a lot longer because I was seeking outside permission. And the reality is, you're the only one that's going to look in the mirror at night. You're the only one that's going to sit with your thoughts alone. Create that peace inside of you. by doing it justice, by just taking action. So maybe, if you're thinking, you're playing with some sort of idea of changing your life, journaling is something that I do all the time. Play with some numbers, be like, what if today was the day that I was going to make that decision? How would I feel? We have this entire inner dialogue for a reason. And a lot of times we let it run away with the negative thoughts, the doubt, the shame, all those things. But dang, what a fun tool to be able to play with. Nobody's inside your head. Nobody's seeing it. There's no shame there. Just use your own thoughts to figure out if that intuition that is speaking to you is the one that's directing you to that next step. That's saying, this is the next level you. Like, this is actually guiding you. And at some point, it can feel like a little like whisper or a nudge or like, bam, right on the head, right? Like, we've all had those moments where we're like, okay, I didn't even need a sign because it's so obvious. But those are some things that I would say is like, you don't need external permission. You just need to be good with it for yourself. Because when I actually did make the decision, I was kind of still trying to convince those in my circle, including my husband, while still trying to convince myself. And that's that's an emotionally draining kind of spot to be in, right?
Yeah, so much. Yes. And I love that you said, like, you're not going to necessarily get the permission that you're looking for, because from my experience, when you choose to go in a different direction that is unknown to most and hasn't been explored by very many people, especially in your circle. Like, I did the same thing with, like, there's nobody in my family who's an entrepreneur. Like, most people aren't going to understand it. And they're also not going to support it because they don't understand it. Not because they don't think that you can do it. It's because they've never even considered that option for themselves. So you have to be able to trust that. And this is like what I love about what Bridgette said, is that she had to finally hand over the trust to herself. And I think that is a big misstep for a lot of people, is that they're looking for something. We are taught to look outside of ourselves for the answers. And nobody teaches us to really look within for the answers. So what do? We read the books, we listen to all the podcasts, we do all the things. We're like, someone just please tell me what to do. And life would be a lot easier if people would. I mean, that's essentially how we live a lot of our life, because it's easier. So how, like, with that said, what was kind of like the most difficult part of that transition, and also like that learning to trust yourself?
Oh gosh, the first 4 years of my entrepreneurial journey I played really small. I didn't really understand so much about what an entrepreneur was. I thought I had to do it by myself. Like, if I didn't build a business by myself, then it wasn't really mine. Like, I just didn't hire people. I just played really small and kind of stuck in my network, but I was just trying to kind of go through the motions. And I think during that time period, there were some moments where I realized, I call them the bathroom floor moments. These are real. If you're listening to this, you kind of understand this might resonate with you, where you have these moments like, I thought it would be better. I thought I would be happier. Why is it not XYZ? Does my husband or my family believe I have a real business? Like, what does success mean to me? And am I okay with it? Am I bold enough to be able to stand up in that definition? And so the bathroom floor moments, I remember specifically, one, where you just find yourself weeping, I mean, these are emotional things. These are life-changing decisions that you're making, and the emotions are bound to come with it. But when you work through it, you believe in it enough, those are actually pivotal points that are just part of the journey. So the bathroom floor moments where you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, why am I not happy? You're going to probably question yourself, because we know that no matter what we are calling in, it might be delivered in a different package. It might come in differently. If we're not clear, in my case, it's the universe. Like, how is the universe going to know what the hell we're talking about? Right. And so those types of moments happened during those first 4 years. And then at some point, you go, nothing's going to change unless I change. Like, I've got to do something super big and intentional. And for me, what that was, where I was like, no more playing small. I'm not meant to do this alone. I don't know why I'm still trying to do this alone. And I need people around me that are thinking bigger. And so for me, it was investing in myself, investing, in mentorship, spending more money on something than I'd ever really spent on, to just really be around people that thought bigger, because I knew it was in me, but I kind of just needed that like energy around me. And so that was a big change for me. But guys, it didn't happen in the first 4 years. So your timetable is your timetable. You can speed it up. Something in this conversation with Stacey and I might really resonate with you, and you go, that's my sign. I'm doing it. I'm ready. But know to give yourself grace throughout the process, because there's no timeline but your own. It's just a matter, are you more uncomfortable staying where you are? Or are you willing to be able to go and say, I'm not going to let my fear of the unknown get in the way of the mission that I meant to fulfill? And only you can pinpoint when that is.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for everybody to hear. And I'm glad that you shared that, because there's a lot of hard moments. There's a lot of hard moments when you are making any type of huge change. And whether that be quitting your job and starting something new, or just any big change in your life, there's going to be a lot of hard moments. And people don't always talk about the difficult moments, but yes, we've all had the crying on the floor, like why is this not working? How come it's working for everybody else, but it's not working for me? And the thing is, like, you just haven't learned the lesson yet. Mm-hmm. And it's such a hard thing, but it's like, that's why, again, turning inward and saying like, okay, like what is the lesson? Because we're always being tapped on the shoulder with lessons until they hit us in the face with a 2x4. And then we're like, oh, there it is. And once you can start to listen to yourself a little bit more, and you have a few of those moments, you're like, okay, like, now it doesn't, like, the lessons don't have to be so painful. They don't have to hurt as bad, because you catch them before they like get to these like insurmountable moments. Right. So, and if you haven't listened to an episode, I did an episode, and it was Don't Keep Your Circle Too Small. And I think that, like Bridgette said, I want to highlight this because, she joined I joined the mastermind, and that's how we met. Again, like you'll notice a theme on this podcast. A lot of the connections that I have made have come from that. And I'm going to let you tell your story, because walking in to that mastermind, like I came in one round after you, but you did it a second time. So thank goodness, because I got to be in your presence. But can you tell us more about that first? Like the first time you walked into that mastermind and you were like with this group of 50 people that you had no idea who they were.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm going to use even just the word evolve, because I know this is so big to you, the podcast name and all this, but it's actually more of, that's what we're meant to do, is evolve. Right. And I can say with 100% certainty that I actually did this mastermind 3 times. So there was 3 full times. The first time I did it, this was the first time I'd invested in myself. I'd never been in a room of entrepreneurs. I was out in LA for this in person. I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm sweating. I don't know what to do. We walk upstairs to meet everybody in person. The AC's out. It gets worse. I realize I'm in this room. Everybody looks so cool. Like they have their shit together, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like this corporate person. And I just, I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't know where I fit in. I was really just kind of in observation mode. And I think I cried a lot because we did some meditation, and there's just all kinds of things that come up. And I was kind of starstruck by the hosts, because I had loved Chris and Lori Harder for so long. I'd been listening to their podcast. Mostly Lori is what I started with. And then meeting them in person for the first time and going, who am I to be here? Right. So you have all these emotions that come in when you get in the rooms with other people. And what you realize pretty quickly, if you're open to these conversations and learning, is that everybody is kind of in the same boat. They're on a different part of their journey in whatever way, but there's always some doubt. There's always, how can I help? Or how do I fit in? Or, when you're building something, that's part of the process, those emotions. And so that was kind of like the first intro that I had. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to do all the things and, get really educated and grow and scale and all this stuff during this period. And when the next round came, I felt like I didn't finish what I started. So I signed up again, because I was like, okay, I got a lot of tools, but I feel like there's more. And so the second round, I showed up completely differently. I had done some energy work, some healing, some spiritual discovery. And I realized at the core of it all, it didn't really matter as much the business strategy side. It mattered the energy with which I was operating, the frequency, the vibration. And like, these are things my corporate CFO self is laughing at me right now because that's not the way that I spoke. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that that is the biggest, most important tool in your arsenal. Is you can learn all the skill sets, you can get all the experience, you can have all the credentials in the world. But if you're not taken care of at home, like Stacey said, inward, then that business isn't going to exude out of you in a way that feels genuine or meaningful or in alignment, or you might attract the wrong clients if you're coming from a place of, I've got this mask on, and that second round was really pivotal for me. And that's when I met Stacey. And then, shit hit the fan. I mean, COVID happened. So there was also some, with that going on, which needed some more of my financial expertise. So I got, a lot of exposure kind of doing that. And then the third round, I just kind of did because I was, feeling the momentum, and it was virtual and I didn't want to lose the network during basically what's happening in the world. So hopefully that helps people. Like, just because you do something one time, there's a different version of you each time. Like, I could hear the same speaker 6 months apart and pick up different nuggets because I receive it differently. I might have different experiences I can apply it to. So to me, I'm always like, I'm here for it. I've invested in it. I'm going to show up for it. I'm meant to listen to this speaker. I'm meant to have this conversation for some reason because it's going to teach me something. And like Stacey said, these lessons show up and they keep showing up and keep showing up. And then you build the tools around them and then they kind of show up in a different form. So it's always part of that process. And it just felt really good to be able to get in those rooms and see that evolvement. And then, being starstruck in the beginning and now actually serving, in that environment. It's an expansion, it's a journey, and it's yours to be able to have. If you find something that feels really aligned to you, I highly recommend investing in yourself and just showing up for it.
Oh, yes. So I want to, just so people know too, like Chris and Lori Harder, some of you may know them. And this was such a big moment because there was actually a time, again, like Bridgette said, she was starstruck in the beginning. And then now she's actually serving. And there's like you've been on Lori Harder's podcast, like things that you would have never imagined were going to happen. And it's not like you went into that mastermind seeking that, right? And like, this is one of the biggest things. Like, if I can give some people some advice, like, don't go into things looking for something in return, because it will never work. That's not how you should go about life. Like, it's just big. But it's funny because I met Bridgette the second time that she was in the mastermind, and I remember showing up that first day in LA. Again, same. I am sweating. I am like, what am I doing here? Why have I done this to myself? Like, what in God's? And so like, when you are being forced to level up, and it's so funny because I actually just talked about this with my EBLA group on Monday. We were talking about fear and anxiety, and I just hired my first person and I went into straight up panic mode after I did it and was like, so this is the reason I'm bringing this up is because like these. And I knew because you're about to level up when you start to doubt everything about who you are, what you're doing, like you're sweating, like nothing. It doesn't, because that is how you break through those glass ceilings that you've placed on yourself.
Yeah. And nobody's immune to it. Everybody that you see is on a different point of their journey, but they're all human. Like, the biggest disservice we can ever do for anybody, and I know Stacey's a big believer in this too, but the biggest disservice is to make people think we have all our shit together. It's just not possible to juggle every single thing and feel super good about every single thing. They're always moving in alignment. That's life. And realignment, I guess I should say. So I love that you said that too, because it's so humanizing. Let's humanize the experience.
Yes. And it's funny because looking back on that journey, like you never know why you are where you are. But like, I have always been a firm believer in following my gut. My gut has never, ever. And now I know that that's my intuition. But at the moment, the only thing that I knew how to attribute that to was a gut feeling, because I was trapped in those lower energy centers, and that's okay. And so I always followed that. But it's interesting because that was the biggest investment I ever made as well. It was, and like we don't hide anything here. Like it was a $8,000 to $9,000 investment at a time when I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with my business. It was like, what, like I had been in health and nutrition coaching for probably a year and almost 2 years at that point. And I knew that something didn't feel right. And I didn't know how to get unstuck. Like I was like, I just feel so stuck. So I invested in this thing. Again, probably had to fudge some numbers with Andrew. No, he supported this one, but in a way of like, okay, I guess we're going to do this. And coming out of that, and I love that you shared, like you did it 3 times because there's nothing worse than that person in the room that's like, I've already done this. Ugh. Like, please never be that person because like Bridgette said, like there's a reason that you're in that room and there's probably a different experience for you waiting if you're willing to open yourself up to it. But I went into that mastermind with one idea of who I was and what I needed in my business. And I spent 6 months in learning all the business strategy, learning all of these things. But I will never forget the one moment that actually transformed my entire being and led me along this journey, which was the first day of the mastermind. After I'm done, I'm probably not done sweating because that's just like who I am. But I'm sitting there and we had somebody named Jordan Sanchez. I have to see, maybe she'll come on the show. We'll have to get her on. But she did this DNA activation on us where we went through this meditation and she was like, she helped us find like the one thing that was missing in our lives. And you had to like pick up this like object. I love that I do this. Like, this is what I was doing in my, if anybody's watching this, they're like, what the hell's happening with your hands? So, she's like, okay, so the thing that I found was a beach ball and what it meant to me was, and this was probably the first time in my life that I had ever really turned inward in a different way of just learning about myself. And like understanding myself, this is where like things really took a turn for me. And I realized that I remember calling Andrew and I was like, Andrew, you're never going to believe what happened today. He's like, what? And I was like, we did this thing. And this, like, what was missing was play. And he was like, yeah, I could have told you that. I'm like, all right, Dick, well, listen. But it was like that moment like I might have spent $9,000 for that. I don't know. But like at the end of the day, I even remember getting to the end of the mastermind. And I was like, that is the one moment that transformed these last 6 months. And by the end of that mastermind, which was 6 months long, I was a completely different person. And I was creating a completely different business that felt so good. But this is, and if any of you know me and what I stand for, play, fun, experiences of life. And like, that was it. And so again, just kind of going back to what Bridgette said is that you don't know why you're being led to where you're being led, but you do have to trust that you're going to get exactly what you need in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to have the experience you were meant to have. So whatever that is, that's a big part of being on this journey of whatever that journey looks like for you. But it's really a big part of just saying, this is meant for me, and not always depending on just the black and white of it, the logical side. I used to be so stuck in my head. I mean, girl, look, I'm a spreadsheet person, right? Like I like numbers, I like things to tie out. So stuck in my head, I had such a distance between head and heart. And it wasn't until I could finally drop into my heart, which came with a lot of tears, a lot of emotion, and realize that there was a connection there. I'm still doing that work. That is something that's a lifelong process, I think, for me, and for many. But I think it's really important that what Stacy says, Stacy actually lives and embodies. And she reminds me as often as possible in the ways that she lives her life to incorporate play. Because that is something it was such a rigid environment that I was in. It was almost taboo to like think about play or, but if we leave behind whatever the structure is and we go and rebuild our lives the way that we want it, and it doesn't include things like joy and play, what were all the personal sacrifices for? Like, what the hell was it all for if we're just going to build something outside of these walls and do it in our own, like a similar structure? So redefining productivity, you talk about that a lot. I love that. The play, the fact that, there's an inner child in us and she wants to get out. What did she enjoy doing? I always tell people, like, when you spend your time, you should be doing one of two things. Either, it should bring you money or joy. And if you can find one that brings you money and joy, double down on that. Like that's the ticket right there.
Yes. And it's such a process to get there. And like Bridget says, like she started her entrepreneur journey 6.5 years ago. And it was probably I won't forget the moment that the Unicrowns came to fruition in Scottsdale. Like it was just when we all got together in Scottsdale, Arizona. And it was only about a year ago that, so after 5.5 years of trying to just figure it out, like all of a sudden that thing that brings you joy and money, and you found it and you were able to double down on that. But that was a process. And same thing with me. Like this has been a hell of a process to get here.
Yeah. It's so important to know that, like, I would challenge people to say, if you get it right the first time, did you really get it right? Like, these are iterations that take a lot of time. So, the pandemic hits, entrepreneurs are kind of like, what problems are out there? What demands are out there? How can I solve them? I pivot. I put out 8 different offers, 8 different programs, webinars. I was webinaring my ass off during the pandemic, just all kinds of different things, personal finance, business finance, all the relief programs, all that stuff. But to Stacey's point, it's like I spun and spun and spun and pivoted until I got dizzy. And then I finally landed and I made the announcement for the CFO and financial services, which is the financial unicrowns, because I love a crown. And I made the announcement in Scottsdale and I literally had tears in my eyes. Like I felt like, oh my gosh, this is it. These are the people I want to serve. I want to serve people that lead with their heart, that have a passion, that aren't as rigid, that understand that this is a journey and nobody gets an entrepreneurial journey like an entrepreneur. So it was really a beautiful moment. That was, we whiteboarded the process out right here in this office in the very end of July. And we were open for business in August. And so the response has been great. The journey continues. Everything's changed. What we whiteboarded out is no longer. So know that when you try something for the first time and you do build it, like you just have to take action so that you can make the first adjustment, because there will be adjustments. Again, if you get it right the first time, did you really get it right? I believe not. I think it's always an evolution. Your clients will tell you, they'll give you feedback. You'll know what feels good, what worked, what didn't work, but you won't if you're going on autopilot. You won't if you're going too fast. It's just about taking that moment to pause and assess and take inventory of your own energy, your own feeling, your own alignment with it all. Like all of these things that we talk about that we embody as leaders and humans are all just one.
It's so true. And, something that you keep coming back to, and I think we probably come back to on almost every episode of this podcast, is that like, you're going to have to do the internal work. None of this happens until you know how to turn inward. And I think the misconception is because we call it personal development, that it has to be done alone. And like, you just know that if you're having all of these feelings, you're going to have to sort it out within you. And we aren't really taught that. So something that I see so many people get caught up in is they want to have it all figured out before they start. And you literally just said, you're not going to have it all figured out before you start. So do you have any like advice on that?
Yeah. It's kind of like, know that there's going to be different versions, but you really can't get to the good version or the right version or the fit that works for you if you don't start with the first one. So even if you kind of go in, one of my favorite quotes is, even if you fall on your face, at least it's a forward motion. You have to get comfortable with whatever failure means to you. You redefine failure just as you redefine success. Like by definition, failure means not achieving success. So if you can redefine success, you sure as hell better redefine failure. Failure just means you're moving, you're trying, you're propelling forward. There are going to be things that are going to make you want to stop. And failure, it used to be such a taboo word, but it's just getting you closer to the thing that works. Wasn't there some sort of crazy quote about the Dyson guy, like how many vacuums he made? Like there was an absurd number of prototypes. And the thing is, he could have never gotten to that one if he didn't start with the first one. So even if you're like, you know what, this first one might kind of suck, I don't know, but that's okay because it's getting me closer to the one that is going to be right.
Yeah. And spot on, like so spot on with all of that. And so, okay. Failure for me. Oh man. Whew. So for me, failure used to be like, I would quit something long before there was even a chance that I was going to fail. Right. And so I'm going to make an assumption, but like, has failure always been so easy for you? Because if you were always driven by external motivation, then failure probably for a long time in your life was not an option.
Yeah. I was terrified of it. I was so chasing the gold stars, external validation, that I needed that I felt like I needed that to kind of propel forward and keep going. And so I wore this armor of this title, this compensation, the busy, pencil skirt and heels running around, that I wore this title and as like a busy as a badge of honor. This was something that I felt like I needed. And failure didn't fit in with that persona, that definition of it, because I worked for somebody else and I had this standard to uphold and this, whatever it is. Then you go work for yourself and you realize failure is part of the process, and it hurts and it stings at first, depending on the meaning that you assign it. I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, if you're out there and you're considering even starting something, or you're just even trying to peel back the layers to your authentic self and show a different side of you, there is a very real fear of judgment. And there's two kinds of judgment, in my opinion. It's either perceived judgment, like I'm not going to put that out there on us. So my so-and-so is watching and they're going to think I'm dumb. Right. And that they're going to think I failed. Or what is she trying now? Well, did you see so-and-so? And you know what? That's perceived because they haven't said anything to you. And then there's actually received, which is a hater dropping in your inbox or somebody saying something to you or behind your back or whatever it is. They're both forms of judgment, but we get in our heads about the perceived judgment and it stops us in our tracks because we don't want to be perceived as failing. I will give you a real raw definition because I know Stacey loves like examples like this. It's not even definition, it's example. I left corporate CFOing and I, again, swung the pendulum. There were so many things that I did that were so anti-CFO, anti-corporate. I walked dogs. I was going to make a flyer about walking dogs in the neighborhood. And then I realized I can't only walk so many steps. I did network marketing. I did corporate wellness consulting as a kind of an extension of the network marketing. There were just things that I did that I was just trying kind of anything. And I had to get really okay, which I probably wasn't at the time, if I'm being truly honest, with people saying, oh God, she was like a corporate CFO. Now she's like wants to walk dogs. Like what happened? But that's the judgment that we think is out there. But I needed to go through all these iterations to be able to say, it's not the job that I hated. It's not the work that I hated. Or became disconnected from. It's kind of a strong word. It's really just the way that I was doing it. It was that I wasn't feeling like myself, that inward piece wasn't there. And so that's really part of how it all came together. For me, it's like I had to do all of those other things. I had to be okay with the fact that things weren't going to work out. I had to be okay that when I launched Financial Unicrowns, somebody on the other end of their phone in their comfort zone wasn't going to be like, God, she's tried like 27 things. Oh my gosh. Who the fuck cares? You don't look in my mirror. You don't pay my bills.
Okay. Yes. So this is something that anybody who has been on this journey needs to hear. And so like go back, rewind, because messy. When you are on this journey and you are trying to figure out who you actually are, when you realize that it was not the external things that were the problem, it was like you said, it was the internal connection that you had to those external things. It looks so messy, right? And so I remember so many times Andrew would say to me, like, you have to stop jumping from this to this to this. Like, people are not going to understand what you do. And I was like, okay, I get that, but like, I can't keep doing something if like I don't feel good about it anymore. Like, I can't do that. And so we do have to let go of that, how it's going to look from the outside in. Because if I hadn't gone from, again, nursing wasn't the problem. It wasn't like I liked my job, but I knew it wasn't for me. And then going into health and nutrition coaching, it was like, so it was nutrition, then it was into holistic health. And then it was like all of those things led me to where I am today, which I kind of joke is like a modern day medicine woman. Like I am able to pull all of these things and like, I'm really good at root cause, connecting dots for people, helping them really pull back those layers. But from the outside in, it is going to look messy and you have to be okay with that. Like, because you just have to stand in it and you have to own it. Because I actually had a friend tell me, the other day that I used to be so intentional and purposeful with what I did. And I was like, okay, like, because now the way that I view myself is everything that I do now is super, like, I feel I'm excited about it. It's purposeful, it's intentional. But from the outside in, what I used to do was very structured. Everything that I did was structured. I had total control over it. And I realized that those were things that was the armor that I was hiding behind. And the real me is spontaneous and fun and authentic and like a little bit messy. And I'm okay with that, but other people might not be. And you just have to be okay moving forward despite that feeling.
I love that you said that. The thing that comes to mind based on what you just shared, just to kind of like pull all that together of what we're saying for those that are listening is like, stay curious. Stay curious. Like if something intrigues you, give it a whirl, read about it, try something. You never know until you actually experience it. And what Stacey was saying is like she pulled all these different areas in to create her gift, to be able to package it up and give it to the world, to be able to help all these women, right? And each part of that journey comes together to create an experience that nobody else can ever create. And that's the beautiful part of it. If you want to be uniquely you, you've got to explore all parts of you.
Yes. And you will never, but like, you're never even going to give yourself the chance to do that if you're so concerned about what other people are going to think about you. And that's something that I love that Bridgette said. And just to like hold on to that, because you have to people are going to judge you whether you do it or whether you don't. So you might as well go for it and see what happens. But stay curious, experiment, like have fun with trying out different things. Like who gives a shit what people think? Because most people aren't happy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that I want a t-shirt. Who gives a shit what people think? Because most people aren't happy. I love it. It's so true because we forget about that. And I think the biggest thing is, go for it and know that if you see somebody going for it, cheer them on, cheer them on because we're all just trying to live our fullest expression of ourselves and be accepted for it, live our fullest expression of ourselves and be in joy as a result of it. Not everybody's your people, and that's okay. One of the things we didn't touch on, but just know that some relationships change over as you grow, and that's okay. It's actually probably meant to be. I'm a big believer in soul contracts, sacred contracts, that people are in your life for a season or a reason. And that's part of the thing that is an evolution. You want to protect your energy and you want to surround yourself with people that lift you up and support you when needed and that you can support and they can receive it. That's a game changer. Think about who you hang around and who you spend your time with, because it's likely that they're impacting you maybe more than you realize it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And that's why you have to be willing to get in new rooms. Like if you don't feel supported, then find the people who are going to support you. Be willing to step into a different room, into a different coffee chat, into a mastermind, into a group program and this is like why I am such a huge fan of group stuff, like whether that be a mastermind or like everything that I do with EBLA is group. And it's because there is nothing like being surrounded by a group of women who are going through a similar journey than you, that like as you are, and being able to pull from their experiences. Like Bridgette hosts an amazing coffee chat every single Thursday. She started this when COVID started, and it is like something that I don't know if we'll ever let go of, because it's like the best thing in the morning. And it's funny because there's always like a theme, like something that like almost every single person is going through in that moment. And one person shares it. And to know that you're not alone and that you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm not a crazy person. We all feel that.
It's just a universal truth. There's nothing better. When you look in the mirror and it's just you and you're like, okay, I'm kind of thinking through things. You look on a Zoom screen and you see all these other women's head bobbing going, yep, I hear that. Yep. I understand what that is. Like there is a commonality there that creates bonds. And that's something that's really important. I know for us, we're verbal processors. We love human connection, virtual or otherwise. And so if that's something that you thrive on, I would seek that out. And if you can't find the room, create the fucking room. Like, yeah, nobody says that you have to go to somebody else's, right?
For sure. And if you don't think you thrive on that, take a step back, because and like examine that, get curious about that, because I used to be like raising hand, the ultimate, like, I don't have girlfriends. I don't need them, because growing up, I was taught that women are catty. Women don't have your best interest in mind. They're always trying to steal your boyfriend. Like there's something going on. So like, I don't know, but so like that was really what I believed. And therefore I didn't need in my like life, I didn't need women. I didn't need girls. Well, I wouldn't give up those friendships that I have created for anything. And so I was afraid of vulnerability. I was so afraid to show any sign of weakness, that the idea of getting around a group of women and actually expressing how I felt was paralyzing to me. And so it's easier to say, no, I just would rather do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Don't do it alone. Please.
Yeah, we're not meant to. We're not meant to, but you got to choose, that wisely. So,
yeah. Okay, one more question, Bridgette, before we pop off, because this has been, we could talk forever, but what is one lesson that you think you are still in the middle of learning right now?
Oh gosh. Let's see. You know what? I think as I'm scaling my business, I think I'm constantly trying to simplify. I feel like sometimes I try to chase too many things. And so keeping things simple, I can overcomplicate things. I think we all can. But I think when you simplify things, you can really appreciate the true, genuine, organic part of like the abundance that it can bring. We clutter things up a little bit. I know I do.
Yeah. Physically, emotionally, mentally, yep. Right? All the things. So I think that's really powerful. And this just kind of goes in alignment with this whole episode, is that we are taught to always be chasing more, more, add. And I cannot say enough. Try getting rid of some things, right? Like, and just like Bridgette said, like simplify. Life is actually very rarely do we need to add more things to our plate. We have to look around and say, what can we start to take away? And so I love that lesson, and I love you. And I couldn't thank you anymore for coming on and just sharing your wisdom with the listeners of this podcast, because I get to talk to Bridgette every single week and she'll blow my mind. So I know that people are going to take so much from this. How can people get in touch with you if they want to? Like, I know they're going to want to just kind of hear more.
Yeah, I am on Instagram the most. That's probably the best way to get in touch. It's just Bridgette Boucha, Boucha. And I also, if you're an entrepreneur, I do a free Facebook group called Money Mondays, where I show up live every Money Monday with some money bombs for entrepreneurs. So if you're looking for a little space where you can get some tidbits about the thing that you might not talk about a lot with other people, which is usually your finances, that's a good free resource and a place to connect with other entrepreneurs. So yeah. And then the Betterment Brew Chat is for female entrepreneurs. So either way, it's all going to source from Instagram. So Bridgette Boucha.
Perfect. Yeah. And please reach out, like get into that Facebook group. I'm on her Facebook group. She is always sharing amazing, just nuggets about money and things that we have to be thinking about. Like that was something I avoided for probably 2.5 years of my entrepreneurial journey. It was like money, what money? And like that, we could go into why that was on a later date, but
Yeah.
for now, we'll just leave it there. So make sure that you connect with Bridgette, even if it's just to say hi or like something that resonated with you from this interview. We love to hear those things. So again, Bridgette, thank you for being here. And I just appreciate you so, so much.
Thank you, Stacey.
Here we go. Welcome back to the Evolve Beyond Limits post show. So Bridgette, man, there's so much that we could actually take from that, but I want to talk about, because we leaned into this idea of intuition and versus like this feeling of just knowing when it is time to move on from something, or it's time to take a leap, or it's time to invest into a program or whatever that looks like. And so I want to talk about the difference between intellect and intuition, because we need both of these things, but most people don't actually know how to listen to their intuition. And so I think it's really important that we talk about this right now. So let me talk about intellect first. Intellect is there to keep us safe. Like it is really there. It's the goals, it's the security, it's the 10-step plan. And we do need this, but most people live from this and only this. And if you live from here, then more than likely you're going to work to develop a bunch of things that you were told you should want and that you should accomplish. And you're still not going to feel joyful and free. And that is what Bridgette was really talking about in this episode when she talked about being in her corporate job and seeking that external validation and getting all the things she ever thought she wanted. And yet she was sitting there feeling like something was missing. I think we can all resonate with that in some way. This has happened and it might be exactly where you're sitting right now. So let me introduce you to intuition. Your intuition is more spontaneous. Your intuition is about your inner guidance. It's really that part of you that just knows. And it allows you to have more faith in the wisdom that is actually within you. So your intuition is always guiding you. And you have to just start listening for that guidance and how it shows up in your life. But intuition it's more spontaneous. And that's why it's a little bit scary, because it doesn't necessarily follow the 10-step plan that you had in your head. But what intuition does is it leads you into the room that gets you in front of the person that is going to take you from step 2 in your plan and let you skip all the way to step 8. Right? Like we don't actually have to go through step 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's about meeting the right person at the right time or having the right opportunity come to you at the right time. It makes things like following your intuition makes things so much easier if you don't fight against it. But here are some things that you need to understand about intuition. It doesn't always follow logic. It's kind of that feeling of knowing without the words. Like we talked about, that gut feeling that like you just know that something is off or right or wrong. You have to be willing to trust that. And we talk about this a ton in EBLA, because like it's having that trust within yourself to make the next best decision for you. It is really attached to your higher self. It's not bound by time and space. It's not bound by your physical body. It's more of a soul reaction than just a physical body reaction. It doesn't operate necessarily in the past or in the future. It kind of takes what's in your subconscious and it goes into the future and it allows it to start happening for you. It tends to speak in things like insights, revelations, or urges. Like I was talking about in the interview, most people can resonate with a gut feeling or a feeling in their body that they're being pulled towards something. And the reason is because most of us are stuck in in our lower chakras. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that we haven't done enough of the internal work for it to connect to our upper chakras, which is really where our intuition kicks in. But everybody has it. And right now it just might be showing up as that urge that you need to do something different, or you need to move in a different direction. And it's funny because it kind of comes through in this feeling of like, have you ever had those thoughts of like, wouldn't it be fun if, or like, wouldn't it be super joyful, or like, what do I want to do today? And that a lot of times is your intuition talking, but then your ego comes in and your logic comes in and says, oh, but you can't. But really, can't we? Maybe that's just fear, right? So it really, and this is the thing, is that intuition gets really heightened when we are in that feminine energy, when we're in that playfulness, that joyfulness, that fun. Like, think about when you have your best ideas. That's where it comes through. So again, I couldn't tell you before why I went into nursing, why then I became a nutritionist, and then finally shifting into this place where I am now as this spiritual guide, this life coach, this person who is putting on experiences and like helping people just truly live lives that set their soul on fire. Because I followed my intuition at every moment of that. When I knew that it was time to pivot, I allowed myself to pivot. And once I did that, it's like the doors start to fly open. I don't know how it's all going to come together, but I trust myself enough to know that it will. The universe or God is always there to support you, but only if you're taking the action steps to move forward. Only if you support you will it come in and help you. Okay, so take credit for what you have created and what you're going to create. All right, so I want you to think about that this week. I want you to what are some areas in your life where you are being pulled to do something else, where you are being driven to, where you just feel this unsatiable urge to move on from something or start something or whatever that looks like. But where could you start to take a little bit closer look at your life and say, is my intuition coming together? Where is it? Is it something that is guiding me? And allow yourself to kind of bring that to the forefront. So you can develop your intuition much faster if you allow yourself to sit in stillness. Stillness, silence, meditation, that is some place where you're going to be able to really start to tap in. But I'll do a whole nother episode on that because I don't want to keep this too long. So take some time this week to think about, when are some times that you followed your gut and how has it worked out for you? Are there places where you're really resisting your intuition and you're allowing the logic to be the guiding force? And how could you start to shift that? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Look at Bridgette. She quit her job 3 times, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Life isn't black and white. But what are some changes that you could start to make to be more in alignment with where your intuition is guiding you to go? Think about it. And until next week, make sure that you are getting in on journaling. Is a great way to really start to heighten and understand like your intuition. And so if you want to be part of our community where we send out journal prompts every single week, then make sure that you shoot me a text at 248-206-3431. Just send journal 2021 so that I can send those to you. And I would love to know, like, hear just more about this journey. I want to come along on this journey with you. So share this, tag Bridgette and myself on Instagram with your biggest takeaway. And this month, you know that we are, for every review of the podcast, we are donating $5 to Reality's Chant Sanctuary and Rescue, which is here in Michigan. And I want to make sure that we are just really supporting great causes as we go through this journey together. So Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for spending this time with us. And until the next episode, keep evolving.